Good afternoon and welcome to the fourth episode of Powered by You. My name is Zino and I'm your host. For today's episode, we'll be talking about how civic participation can contribute towards tackling serious youth violence. Today, I'm joined with Philip Lita, who's from RBKC's community safety team. And I'm joined with Walid, who's a young adult who works within the local community. Thanks for joining both.
Thanks for having us.
No worries, pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how's it been? What's the latest things that's been happening in your world of community safety? Anything exciting?
Well, you know, especially in my role, I get the opportunity to create and design new projects and positions like within what we do. So I get to see things come up from scratch. So recently we've got a community development coordinator that started. And that's a role that I was involved in kind of designing the job role for that as well. So we've got that happening as well, and obviously being here with you guys.
But I've missed out the most important question.
Yes.
Is how are you? how you been? Like,
do you know what? I'm really, really good. It's again.
How are you feeling? How are you feeling this week?
How am I feeling?
Yeah, it's only Tuesday. We're not halfway there.
I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling like I'm good. I'm ready to go. I'm no days the same. I've gone from the office to doing a podcast. Not many people can say that. So yeah, I'm really.
You're
excited.
living the dream.
I'm living the dream.
The high life,
I'm
as
really
they say.
Excited to be here. Absolutely.
Okay. Wait, so you said you got so many things going on. What is it that you do? What's your role called exactly? What is it that you do within community safety?
Yeah. So I'm the Serious Youth Violence Coordinator. So it's a really serious name. And essentially, if you can imagine, I'm the ultimate middleman. I connect services within the RBKC borough. That's statutory and non-statutory. Statutory mean there's services that are directly funded by the government, i.e. your social services, police, early help, all those kind of services that help under 18s and adults, as well as non-statutory. So that's your third sector organizations, charities, youth clubs, various kind of initiatives in the community. So I lead on the kind of the serious youth violence response or approach within the borough.
That's actually very full on. You know, I don't know how you find the
expect
capacity
that.
to do.
You didn't expect that.
I wasn't expecting that, but you know what? I always known you to work hard. You're a hard worker, like so.
Yeah,
I was kind of expecting you to say something along those lines. I'm not that surprised, but all right, that's enough about you. You said you're taking the spotlight. Now, obviously, we have Walid. How you been? How's things?
I'm well. Really busy as always, you know, because I'm on the ground in the community. So I'm usually like, I see actively the young people, and I try to be like a positive role model for them. So they kind of see like what I get up to on a day to day, and I try and like help them out in terms of not only with their education or work placements, whatever it might be, but just mentoring in general, you know, try to get them away from certain lifestyles which are really attractive to the young people nowadays on road. But me, myself, I'm well. Can't complain.
Glad to hear that. How long have you been doing this job for, if you don't mind me asking?
In this borough, I've been here for about coming up to 2 years now. I've been working with young people in general for about 7 years now, 7 to 8 years. So I've worked in the youth offending team as well. So always been working with this field of work in particular.
Right. Well, who's it you work for?
I work with St. Giles at the moment. So I'm a senior caseworker at St. Giles Trust. We're based all over. So we're based all over London and even outside London and other cities as well. But I'm based in Ladbroke Grove area. That's where my office is.
Okay.
But
yeah.
I work around all over the borough. So, yeah.
So is it 50-50 between north and south?
Yeah, it is. It's literally 50-50. Like, so the north of the borough is where I used to work with a lot of young people, but recently I started working with a lot more people in the south of the borough. So it's all over. Yeah,
that would be interesting to find out about later on this podcast.
Yeah, for real.
How the two differ from each other.
Yeah.
But obviously for today's topic, we're trying to think how can we it'll be best for us to define what civic participation is to start with and what serious youth violence is in two separate terms rather than talk about them both in one setting. I think that's a good way to start. So like if we start with potentially the first question is, how would you explain what civic participation is in simple terms?
Yeah, I think probably the most simple terms to look at it is a voluntary activities that an individual or group can take part in. It can be in a formal or informal setting. So, i.e., volunteering at your local youth club, kind of either helping out, mentoring or whatnot, or kind of engaging with the elderly, for instance, at your local residential place and things like that.
Or bingo night.
Exactly. Or kind of supporting with voting registrations at your local council, things like that.
Yeah. Do you have a similar view on what his definition is?
Yeah, very much so. I do have a very similar point of view. It's definitely about making sure the community takes the lead and everyone gets involved in the same community perspective.
Okay, so if we're on the same page of what civic participation is, now the question is, how can we attract people towards being involved to a certain extent? For example, we're looking at 18 to 30-year-olds increasing their involvement.
Yeah.
And when you say helping out your local bingo night, or maybe just doing what's it called, voting
registration,
registrations, some might think, that's for me, but then is it the majority we're looking at or the minority?
Yeah, well, that's a really, really good question, because especially the target group we're looking at in terms of like young adults, 19 to 30-year-olds and things like that, and working for free or doing something outside of your immediate kind of responsibilities isn't the first thing on your mind type of thing. Or why would it be important? Why would I want to do this?
That's it.
And so, and I was very fortunate, for instance, I started volunteering from the ages of 18. So I worked at my local youth offending service. I also worked for a local MP, but more in relation to this, I volunteered at my local youth service, and I was working full time at my local ASDA.
Right.
So I was doing two things: wearing a green uniform at day and working at the local youth offending service. And I guess what the benefits are, there are various benefits that I got to know then that I think answers your question in terms of how can we make something like this more attractive to people.
That's true.
Yeah.
But then 100% agree with you. But I think we need to understand, or when I say we, as in the community, needs to understand the impact it has, what kind of positive impact it can have on society.
Yeah.
So that's the question. How does civic participation impact our society?
Yeah. Well, I think it brings communities closer together. It brings, people providing their time and their experiences and resources into others. You're impacting and doing that, helping individuals or groups. So like I said, I worked with young people, and if you're, say for instance, you're a local entrepreneur, business owner, and you volunteer, for instance, again, working at the local youth offending service, you can provide your expertise and experiences into that as well. So you're tying people together. Actually, a lot of people, it's known that a lot of people who are involved in voluntary activity are physically healthier. They take part in physical activity. They're happier as well, because obviously they're socializing more and they engage in positive activity, meaningful activity with other people.
Okay. That's there's a lot of options. So clearly there's not a lack of variety there.
No.
So obviously now with Lead stated that he works with young people throughout different wards, or should we say the borough in general.
Yeah.
Is it something that is on your checklist to get people more involved in community initiatives?
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the things I do as well in my field of work is also I try to make relationships with different partners in the borough. So I go to different community centres, different organisations, and I try to build relationships with them. And what I've noticed is that the feedback that they give me is that they've got amazing facilities. They might have a music studio, they may have a sports gym, but the young people are not coming in to use it. So that's where someone like myself is able to bridge the gap, because I actively work with them. I can almost bridge the gap and just bring the young people to them services, and then they'll be also best of both worlds, like Hannah Montana. So so that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm hearing it. I'm hearing what you're saying, and it does sound great. But then we got to face the reality side of things.
Yeah. What obstacles do you face? Because saying that if you have facilities of XYZ that are worth a certain amount of money, and some people are keen to engage in these initiatives, but then we got to look at those who don't want to engage and ask ourselves, why is that? So in terms of your obstacles, what do they tend to look like when you do come across them?
I'd say what it is that most of the young people that want to, that even would go to these community centers, they don't feel attached to it at all. They don't have no relationship with it in the past, you know. Whereas like myself, where I'd go to my local community center back in the day, but that's because I used to go there when I was younger. Whereas these young people nowadays, they never have any sort of ties to it ever. They were aware of this place when they were younger, but they don't have it. So it's just about building that new relationship, and also they may be frowned upon for previous other things or just their status. So it's very difficult to actually do that.
I get you. So would you say partly the part reason to blame is certain organizations tend to have a high turnover of staff, for example, which might disturb the whole rhythm of having that relationship with young people coming through the doors? Because if you're a young adult that is looking to connect with someone and have a commonality that you could, you know, just embark on your journey on, sort of thing. So if you just about manage to connect to someone, the next minute they've moved on for whatever reason, then you see a new face coming and you just think to yourself, do I have that same social battery within me to actually start from scratch again, to talk about what my needs are, or to talk about what my interests are, stuff like that. So do you think these are external factors that we can't control that might contribute towards people not having an interest in engaging in such activities?
Yeah, so wide range question, because we're looking at ages from 19 to 30.
18 to 30,
18 to 30. Yeah. So, like I said, in terms of when I joined, became a volunteer at 18, or I'm looking at that age, and I also work and mentor with students from university, for instance, and they don't always understand that it's not just academic qualifications that, for instance, are going to get you a career job. The experience of doing voluntary work and getting experience from that is what's going to benefit you. And so what people don't understand is some of the benefits and advantages from civic participation, building up your network, building up your experiences, building up your human resource, that kind of your own kind of human resources and people that you know. I think kind of getting that information out there and letting them know that that's what they can do. Obviously, as you get older and you might be already in a full-time job or whatnot, the first thing you're saying is, well, I don't have time. I've got my own type of thing is. And the thing is, there's different avenues, there's different things that you can do. You don't have to necessarily dedicate a whole day. You can dedicate an hour or two, depending on what organization is out there, or on the weekend for an hour or two to something, and at least you're giving back to your community, or you're giving back to the people that are there. So it doesn't have to be formal. It can be an informal setting, and it's kind of having knowledge about how you can do that.
That's true. Because you're talking and I'm hearing everything that you're saying, but I can literally just, if we rewind back, you said you started this journey of yours within community safety remit, or maybe in a community setting, let's just say, at the age of 18. Yeah. So you had an interest and you knew where you wanted to be at.
No, I stumbled into it.
You stumbled into it?
I stumbled into it. So I worked in Asda.
Right.
I was 18 at the time. At that point, I already worked there for about 2 years. And I continued to work for another 3 years. And I was that student who's completed their university and wasn't getting any jobs at all. And every time I looked at, obviously, what they needed was experience. And I was in the late night shift. I was feeling like depressed, anxious, thinking, what was the point of doing this qualification if I'm not gonna get anywhere? What the hell? I remember I turned around and the first colleague I saw there, I just kind of said, I'm in this situation. And she was like, well, why don't you just volunteer? That's what I did. And she got into dentistry or whatnot. She goes, yeah, your ultimately experience is your currency. So that's what you need, and you can just work for free. What you can give is your time and energy, and in return you get experience. And the light switched on from there for me, and that's how we continued on.
So that's what kind of influenced.
Desperation influenced me.
Yeah.
So that's essentially that I had the need to succeed.
That's the thing. So yeah. So that's a good drive. That's Absolutely, a good drive, and it's good to use these emotions as a way to progress forward. But okay, let's say someone who had no ambition, no drive, don't know what they want to do. Yes. But they're part of a community. You can't say to someone you're not part of a community. They're as much as part of the community as much as everyone else is. How would you try to actually come forward with that? Just trying to persuade someone, trying to influence. What factors would you say influence someone that might not have a particular connection to their community to try to turn things around?
Yeah, well, I think the first question is obviously why don't they have the connection to that community, and kind of get into the weeds of that. Why do they feel disconnected from their community? And then obviously you're asking a lot more deeper questions. You're talking about meaning and what purpose is for them. What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? And can you not? Is there small steps you can do to kind of make that happen? You know, when people think of like civic participation, they tend to think of like a formal process of volunteering for the cadets or doing that kind of thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It can be at your local church, your local mosque, maybe given an hour a day to doing something, or just kind of helping out in a football activity that under 10s or under 15s are getting involved in. Obviously, but the reason is why, and that's an important one. I think that goes into I guess a human intuition, and kind of going back to what is it for? What's the purpose? Why am I here? And why is this important to me?
Yeah, and then from there it just leads on to how would you encourage it? Yeah. So once you get someone that's willing to try it, how could you basically not lose that person or make them think, all right, I'm actually interested now, instead of them losing interest and never coming back?
Well, I wouldn't be scared of someone losing interest. I think the one benefit, I don't know if Wally would concur is that when I was working for free, when you're working for free or doing internships or volunteering, is you're not tied down, and you can, if you realize, okay, I did this, but I want to do something else, you can change, and you can do that. So find something new, and find something that really intrigues you, and at least by doing the current role you're in now, you know what you're good at, you know what you enjoy, and then you know what you want to move on to.
Okay, yes, I think we've heard a lot about your life experience, but we haven't heard from Waleed's personal life experience, where his journey is. You know what? I'm actually really interested to find out what made you think I want to give back to society, back to my local community as well, and especially when you're hands-on, pretty much like you said, you're on the ground. How did you just come to that decision that you want to be heavily involved to that extent?
Mine's pretty different to Philip's one, because my experience is one of actually lived experience. You know, what the young people are doing now, I used to do, you know. So when I was like 17, 18 years old, even 16 years old, I used to get in trouble quite a lot with the authorities, with the police, you know, picked up a criminal record when I was young. So I grew up in an estate as well, sort of thing, where like it was kind of notorious for like things like drug dealing and trouble, antisocial behavior. And I was just one of them as well. But I got kicked out of my secondary school. And I know it's difficult. You guys looking at me now saying, you? But I was just naughty, you know what I mean? I wasn't one of the worst ones, but I was just ones that used to get carried away and join in. And there was a turning point. And the turning point was probably when I was about 18 years old. I was one of the ones that was quite smart naturally anyway, but didn't really care about education. But then one of the group of friends that I did grow up with actually got murdered. He was involved in a serious incident where like he must have gone somewhere the night before where there was something happening that was quite serious, and he actually passed away there. But then he was kind of like, I remember speaking to him a couple of days before that, and I was just like, and he was just telling me things like, you should continue with university, you know what I mean? You should keep going, you know, you're the only one from the ends that's doing it, you know what I mean? Stick to it, my bro. And he was a bit older than me, you know what I mean? And that was for me like a personal turning point, because I said to myself, like, he didn't need to get himself involved in that, and I didn't need to be around these guys for so long, because I could have actually gone places, and I could have continued to move on with my life, because I wasn't really one of them, you know, in terms of like I didn't share the same interests. I wasn't really fascinated by what they were doing, but it was the money, you know, the quick shortcuts, the easy access things, and I learned a lot from that. So that's how I kind of like said to myself that I wanted to kind of be a role model, because like a lot of the younger kids that was coming up in my area were just, I could see them going down the same path that I went down, in terms of the fact that exploitation is real, you know, and it's real now, and it was real back then as well. And I've seen it. I've seen little things like when a group of boys are going towards a football. I was 14 years old. I used to go to the local football club. We're walking there, and then on the way back, we're going to bump into a group of boys who are older. They're not really pressuring us or anything like that, but they're going to say things like, do you like them? I like your football boots, but do you want the latest ones that Ronaldo's wearing? yeah, how do I get that? Because you can't ask your mother because she may not be able to provide that for you. So
Yeah.
then they'll offer you little things like, okay, cool, come back to me tomorrow, I'll give you £100, or just drop this bag there. Real life scenarios, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
when
yeah.
that stuff's happening, you know what I mean, you're absolutely oblivious to it. But then as someone who's kind of like decided and got to that point where like I want to change my life, it's easy for me to kind of like change that. That's why what fascinated me about even getting into this field of work in the first place. And since then, like I've just grown from working as a volunteer in the youth offending service. I was a panel member, and then I went to university. I managed to graduate, and then I went on to do my masters, and then I managed to find work somewhere. But then I knew that this was the field of work that I wanted to get to, and I'm still on my journey as well. There's places that I want to go, and there's more things that I want to achieve. And just right now, being on the ground and being that direct role model for these young people. So when they're speaking their language, like, "Yo, bro, what's going on, guy? What are you telling me? I got that for you up." I understand them. Whereas a social worker might understand them because I've grown up in it. So you know what I mean. So that's the advantage that I've got.
Yeah.
And because I'm still a professional, then they can kind of see the fact that yes, I've got lived experience. Yes, this guy's a professional, but he speaks the same way as me. So it's just like, okay, there's hope for them. So that's how I try and do it. That's a bit about my personal experience.
No, your personal experience is really,
amazing.
yeah. You know what? Just powerful as well as upsetting to hear that you've actually gone through certain situations in life and hardships, as you said. But then again, it's almost like we said, you got to use your experiences to make the best of the moments that you can actually progress forward in.
Yeah.
And you've actually done that. So you know what? Like, you've done really well. So it's just like it kind of leads into the whole serious youth violence element, because you both described what civic participation is, how you actually got into it in the first place, and what it currently looks like, and how you would use your personal skills to actually encourage others to get involved. So there's two different views, which is highly valuable. But then obviously now we're looking at the serious youth violence element, which definitely both of you are heavily involved in. What would you say are the three major factors that contribute towards serious youth violence, that lead to it, shall I say?
That lead to it?
Yeah.
Oh my word.
If you had to pick if you had to pick like top three.
Fully loaded question.
Yeah. If you had to pick three, obviously I'm not saying there are only three.
Yeah.
There's various, but if you just had to pick the ones that stand out.
Okay. Well, if I was to be concise about it, as concise as I can be, there's elements of I'll say sub-elements of today's youth culture. So when I'm talking about youth culture as a whole, but there's sub-elements of youth culture where there's a code behavior where violence is esteemed, where violence is respected. So if we're in the club and you step on my shoes, I don't say, "Oh, sorry, mate, you stepped on my shoes." I would respond to you with violence, and I'll get respect for that, or whatnot. Or if I'm trying to put my will over you, or to show you who's top dog, violence would be esteemed in that would be the kind of result of that. So kind of on a granular level, you might have situations, and probably talk about social. I'll add social media to this because I think it takes things from 1 to 10 real quick. Because if me and you have a fight on a local street with just maybe Waleed there, that's one thing. Waleed can go tell the story how I beat you up, and people might believe it, might not believe it. But if Waleed films it and 100,000 people see it, the stakes change totally. And now there's an onus on you to do more than what I did to you. And so unfortunately, there's a false sense of in terms of that code of behavior, there's a false sense of when and where violence should be used and what respect is. And so I think that's what you have, where you have obviously young people. Sometimes in what's happening at times, we have young people who live on separate estates, who, for the sake of showing that my area or my estate or my group is better or tougher than yours, would provoke each other online, for instance, and then these things will spit out on the street. Obviously, this isn't the only reason, like you said, but I think that's one of the. So
violence is one of the factors.
So a code of behavior around violence, and then social media, which kind of expands on that. And I think the third thing would be I think kind of again tied to that is I'll have to think about it.
You said there was a lot that you wish I start.
There's tons. I think okay, on the third level it will be more around, and I think it's a little bit less so, but it's just as important around the economics of it in terms of violence for the purpose of gaining economic interest out of it, whether it's robbery, violent robbery, I'll take your chain, I'll beat you up, or essentially me taking over a particular territory or block to kind of run a illegal business from.
So we have violence, social media, and
so a code of behavior around violence, social media, and I guess economic reasons.
Okay. What would you say, Willie? Do you have a similar top three, or is it a bit different to?
It's definitely very similar top three.
Nothing that you wouldn't change or have something else that you might put in.
Like, I'm trying to pit him against me.
No, it would be good to see two different other factors as well. Because if you brought in three factors, that you consider that are the highest, they potentially lead to serious youth violence.
Yes,
it would be good to see that Waleed is on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
His opinion might change from this week to next week on what the biggest three influential factors that lead towards serious youth violence.
Yeah.
Because as we're living now, things are changing. Interests are changing as well. And also just various factors as music is also evolving as well. So maybe your three are still valid. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying it would be good to get two different answers.
Yeah, it's true. Interesting you said music as well, because I've been asked like so much times, what do you think of the genre drill and how does that impact young people in particular? And at first I was like, no, it's just a music, it's not that deep. And then I started working in Kensington, Chelsea, and I saw how music here is on another level and how it definitely incites some sort of violence and there's a reaction that comes from it. But then you've seen how people have become really successful with music. And then you've seen how people have kind of like used music as like to almost explain themselves and expose what they're doing at the moment and almost like brag. And then it kind of makes them weak and vulnerable to the point that people want to just get back to them and attack them, and it's vice versa. And it's just definitely the power aspect, the money aspect, the drugs aspect. There's so much different things that can contribute to why serious youth violence is at an all-time high. Things like protection is underlooked as well. Young people feel like to be secure, to be safe, they have to almost be also in this lifestyle as well. So that's why I've come across so many young people who just carry knives on a day-to-day. They don't feel no type of way about it. They're carrying knives, and I'm speaking to them. I'm like, you're speaking to me now. Like, why do you need to carry a knife? It's not because of you. It's because as soon as I leave here, I might come across someone who doesn't like me, and then I might have to react because they've got a knife. That's the only reason why I've got a knife. And it's just that fear, you know what I mean? So people kind of overlook it sometimes, but fear is something that can add to serious youth violence, because if you're scared of something, like, you don't want to be hurt, you don't want to be caught, you don't want to be in any sort of altercation, so you're going to carry a knife as a protection in their head. And I'm trying to turn them away from that and make them understand it's not worth it. It takes things like someone getting stabbed that was close to them, somebody getting seriously hurt, or actually being stabbed themselves for them to hit that point where they've hit that reachable, teachable moment where they can kind of change their lives, I guess.
That's true. Okay, that's really good way of explaining it and putting it forward. But what about factors that you don't have control over, such as being related to someone, being friends with someone, being born into a certain family, for example? It's sad to say, but it has a track record of certain things that go on. You just automatically enrolled into the course of life, and you just have to basically look out for your safety. How would you say that's a big factor, or was it a minor factor in the field of serious youth violence?
So in terms of, like, say for instance, I know that statistically speaking, a lot of fatherless homes, for instance, or absent fathers, having homes like that are used to correlate between violence and gang involvement and things like that. It's not to say kind of speak disparagingly towards single mothers or anything like that. I came from a single parent home for a period of time in my life as well. But statistically speaking, a lack of a male role model or father in the house plays a big part into that, because if you don't have someone there to teach you in terms of relationships and how to deal with conflict, for instance, you don't have a direct reference to that. Somebody else is going to teach you that. Somebody else in your local estate or on the social media or anything like that will teach you that, and they won't teach you necessarily what someone like a family member or father would, who care for you. They'll teach you their own way, and so a response to violence can be contribute from that.
So that's having, for example, what you described there is having an empty gap in the household setting.
Yeah.
But what if, let's just say you have a family, a full set family, but then again, the family that you're involved in, I've already been involved, and you just happen to be in that. You can't choose which family you're born into.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's what we're saying is the factor. Is that a severe factor, or is that would you consider that as it's not a major factor that could contribute towards serious youth violence? Is it a big determinant?
Well, it's difficult to say in terms of statistically. I can only speak anecdotally in terms of my own experiences. I would say, from myself when I was a gangs worker as well. I think you can play out two ways. You can have young people, individuals, for instance, whether you come from a violent home or a home, for instance, where there's drug misuse or alcoholism. It's either one or two responses. One, I've seen the effects of alcohol, I've seen the events of violence, I'm never going to drink alcohol, I'm never going to get involved in violence, and so they take a different path. And the other one is a learned behavior. Well, this is how you respond if there's disrespect, or this is how you respond if there's something going on, and you take on that behavior. How prevalent or significant that is in the kind of wider picture amongst the young people we work with is difficult to say, but I think it does play a role. I think if working with young people in any capacity, if the parents or those that they live with are, for instance, involved in criminality or violence or anything like that, it is that much harder, because even if they have a positive 1 hour mentoring session with you, they still got to go back home.
That's it. And especially if you crumble under peer pressure. Yeah. And it doesn't help if it's coming from your own family members or just friends that you consider close as well. It's going to be a big obstacle to try and overcome. But yeah, just it's a bit of something to think about, I suppose.
Yeah. I can feel a real serious atmosphere in the studio right now. But that's
How can we reduce serious youth violence through civic participation?
Well, the benefits of civic participation we were talking about earlier is it talks about building connections within the community, and that's from young to old. Nowadays, we live in an increasing society where we don't even know the names of our next door neighbours. We don't know their birthdays or anything. We don't know nothing about each other. We go to and fro. And so when you live in an increasing environment where everybody's isolated, you care less about what's happening. If you care less about what's happening in your immediate vicinity, what's happening a little bit wider in your community, you care less and less about. But if you increase civil participation, for instance, people getting involved in different ways, whether it's being a panel member at your local youth offending service, whether it's kind of volunteering and working with 10 to 15 year olds in the local football park or stuff like that, you build a connection, you build you're a stakeholder now in your community. And so by doing that, by connecting people and people working together, you have a greater chance in terms of reducing not just violence, but in terms of, I guess, criminality within your area, because people feel more connected and are willing to support and invest into each other a lot more.
Okay. So within the area that you said communities, so we're in RBKC.
Yes.
What would you say is the most common youth violence?
So the most common form of youth violence. Yeah. So statistically, it'll be knife violence, there's many two types really, well three, but it'll be knife violence, firearms, and I guess direct physical violence. So hitting, using the hands type of thing. Knife violence will be first, and then it'll be physical violence, and then there'll be firearms.
Is this the order in RBKC?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's generally lower compared to the other London boroughs and the national average itself, but obviously it exists and it is here.
Okay, that's good to know, because a lot of people do wonder what is the current most used form of violence.
Yeah. And when I say it's lower, I'm not trying to like lessen the impact of it.
No, of course
it's just
not.
talking about quantifiably. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's true. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree 100%. I'd say definitely knife violence is the one that's the most popular at the moment amongst the young people. They just carry it on themselves all the time. It's just for protection, they say. But it's just the different types of weapons that they can get as well. Because these knives have got different names. They call it ZKs, calling it a zombie knife, for example.
Oh man.
And then they've got like flickies, which is like a flick out knife sort of thing. And it's easy for them to hide it, and it's easy for them to put it away and stuff like that. So that's why people tend to carry them all the time. So yeah, I'd say knife one is the most popular, whereas physical one is dropped dramatically as a result of people having the need to defend themselves with knives.
Don't they care about the consequences that comes with it?
Not really. As far as I'm aware, I don't feel like they're aware of the they don't care about the consequences, because they've seen their friends get away with it. You know what I mean? What happens is they've got friends who've been stopped with knives, and straight away they've been released the next day. You know what I mean? So there isn't much they can do. You know what I mean? There's first-time offences. They're aware that it's first-time offences. They're aware if they're repeat offenders. So the best way to go about it is basically just letting them know that what the risks are. They're not aware enough. So there needs to be more people. There must be civic partnership response in terms of the fact that there's more workshops and there's more opportunities for them to know about what the results are. More relationships with the police, building that relationship, because it's completely broken in general. And if not for the police, people who can actually like bridge that gap, like St. Giles, like other organisations that I'm aware of as well. So yeah, that's the best form.
Just to add to what Walid said, I don't know if this was your experience when you was a panel member. I remember when I was a panel member, I did it in a youth offending service in South London. I won't name them, but I was gold dust because number one, I was a man. Number two, I was young, and number three, I was an ethnic minority. Yeah, absolute gold dust. Whereas everybody else is a retirement age, white British, which is fine because they've made their time available. But people that look like me, or for instance, were just not there, and so you know, I was constantly being used in a good way in terms of kind of being involved in these panel meetings and kind of helping support.
So you was the golden goose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just because availability, not because I was amazing at what I was doing.
It's just so rare to get.
I like to think I was amazing, but I was available.
I'm pretty sure you was. Don't sell yourself short.
Don't sell yourself short.
So all this panel talk that I'm hearing, because you mentioned it, Walid mentioned it as well. What are there current opportunities at this time within the borough to be part of a panel?
Well, I don't know if it's. I'll have to ask the RBKC Youth Offending Service. I'm sure there will be, but there will be also other availabilities.
And what does that mean to be part of a panel? Because you just mentioned panel, but some of the viewers might not know what that might consist of, or what might that lead to, or what is it require 1 day a week? Is it twice a week? Is it maybe just once a month? And if you just touch on that a little bit.
I mean, Walid, you did it most recently, so I don't know if you wanna.
Well, for me, it was basically when the young person receives an order. You know what I mean? To attend a youth offending service, for example, and then my role would be just to sit down with the young person and always look for reparations for them to do, and also talk about the best form of practice for them after leaving that. So obviously taking them away from serious risks that are there to them, and making sure that they're aware of the consequences of what they've done, and finding what the decision should be, you know. Should they, as a result of receiving a youth offending order now, should they be given a certain restriction to giving an electronic tag on their leg, for example, or something else?
Okay, and that's you don't need no qualification.
Advice.
You don't need no sort of background to be part of a panel. You can just be anyone, right? And just
member of the community.
What's the criteria for that?
The figure was you have to be a member of the community. I mean, when I mean by that, it's got to be living in the area, which it was at the time, and absolutely. Member of your local community, or that particular local. Something else as well.
But it was a bit different for me. I mean, I did it years ago. I wasn't.
How long was that? It wasn't BC times, huh?
So I was 18 at the time. It was 2009. So
That's when Bitcoin come out.
Yeah. It was 2009, and I was doing it there, and but it wasn't my direct local borough, funnily enough. So I did it in another borough.
Right.
So that's why I was asking Walid if there's been significant changes. I think. Yeah. You don't. I think that for me, you just had to be available. I did recently have a student that I was mentoring from a university, and didn't have a great experience in terms of volunteer. She went for an interview and she didn't get it. She was a young Muslim girl, and she was told that she couldn't do it because essentially she didn't have the lived experience. So she wasn't. I couldn't. Yeah, that's new. That's it's a terrible, absolute terrible reason not to allow someone to kind of contribute and to be involved in that, because you don't know what her lived experience and how that would help the people that she's working with, because how many of these are the people, young people there are going to encounter maybe someone like her there, and what she can add to that. So but it that was, hopefully it's a real kind of one-off type of thing. So yeah, let's hope so.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's true. But that's really good that we managed to actually discuss the various ways that you could get involved within civic participation to try and reduce serious youth violence through various ways. And we visited the very basic of things, such as getting to know your neighbour, being involved with your local football team, or volunteering maybe once a month at your local church or mosque or synagogue or gurdwara, or wherever it may be, to full on being on a panel and dedicating your hours to volunteering. So there's a variety of choice, and I don't think people should definitely just dismiss it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even though sometimes you may not be thinking that at this point it's not your concern, but just think about later down the line it might impact you or someone around you. As they say, prevent is better than cure.
100%.
Facts, I agree.
Yeah, so do you have any like additional comments that you'd want to add as a takeaway message for those who are watching?
Yeah, I think just on a deeper level, I think we all as just human beings want meaning and purpose in life, and trying to find out what that is. And sometimes we can be caught in a analysis by paralysis type of situation, where you're just thinking and overthinking things. How do I move forward? What do I do? When do I do it? What am I here for, essentially?
What was it? Analysis by paralysis.
Paralysis by analysis. So overthinking something.
That is sensational.
You could have just said overthinking.
Sorry, just overthinking things all the time, and which.
But it does sound good though. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Well, I heard it, and I thought
that's that CSI.
I like to
language.
think I coined it, but I can't. It belongs to somebody else. But we all kind of have those, and it's not a bad. It can be bad, obviously, if you aren't moving, aren't doing anything, and you feel stagnant. I think volunteering and engaging and doing different things in your community, no matter how little or how small, start off little. Start off whether it's your local neighbour, and begin to saying hello to them in the morning, checking up on the old lady that lives across the street from you, like making sure she's okay. Start off by maybe looking at Google, what are simple stuff, and then kind of building on from that and growing from that. And maybe the first thing that you do might not be the things that you want to do, but it leads into something else that you're good at.
That's it.
You're going to want two things in life: one, something that you're really good at, and being able to have the ability to do, and the thing that you enjoy. So if you enjoy something and are good at it, keep on cracking on, and volunteering and participating in your communities is what's going to help you do that.
100%. I agree with what you said, and simple stuff. Just a smile does a lot.
100%.
Smiling at people does not cost you money.
It doesn't.
It doesn't take away anything from you.
It doesn't.
And it's a pleasant thing to add into your life.
Absolutely.
And even though you said you might not be good at something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're incompetent. It just means this isn't a perfect fit for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's other options out there. You're in a city that has potentially endless opportunities.
Precisely.
So don't let no one try to talk you down or discourage you, saying that you know what, you're no good for this, or you're not really a perfect match. At the end of the day, no one is perfect. If they do claim to be perfect, then you got to just think, really is that the case? So don't take feedback to heart if it's not coming with constructive element to it. So if they're giving you some feedback and nothing to follow up with on how to improve, then take it with a pinch of salt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, Waleed?
I'd echo what he said, but I'll just say as well that everyone that's listening right now, you can be that change, you can be that person, you can make that difference. It doesn't matter what walk of life you've come from, what you've experienced in the past, you can actively be responsible for being a better person. And also just, you know, you see what's happening around you all the time, you know what I mean? And this is the best chance for you to, like, if you're taking anything that we said in, serious youth violence is on the rise. These young people do need more role models. They do need more people giving back. Yeah. If you're successful and you've got a successful career, but you've grew up in a council estate, for example, or in the similar surroundings to most young people are growing up in today, then be that person who goes back and gives something back, you know, because then you'll be their role models, because they haven't got no role models nowadays, you know. And you can be that person. You can be that person that they look up to. My role model when I was growing up, let me just say, off the top of my head, was Will Smith. Well, the old Will Smith. The old Will Smith or something, whatever. Yeah, I had even
consider that statement.
The Bel Air one. Yeah. But then I could never be like him. What have I got in common with him? And then when I was taking it back to my culture, okay, cool. What Somali man is a role model to me? I was like, okay, cool. Let me think. Like, yeah. Mo Farah maybe, but I can't run like him, so you know it's just limited.
You
know
got
what I
a
mean?
few Somali celebrities.
Now we do. We've got Chunks, we've got Maya Jama, we've got a couple, but at the same time, you know what I mean?
Puff Daddy.
Now Puff.
Is he Somali? Was that a rumor?
I don't know.
I heard it was like 50-50.
Denzel Washington. There's a couple.
I think we need to tweet him. Said, "Are you Somali?"
I don't know.
Denzel Washington, yeah.
Denzel, Beyonce. There's a couple, but
Beyonce as well. Okay,
we're claiming them all now. But no, literally, you can be that person to give back and be that role model. That's just what I encourage.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what it is.
Wow, that's powerful. You know what, guys? Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, bro. Big pleasure.
Such a good conversation.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll have many other things to talk about within community safety.
Look forward to it.
And until then, people, if you liked what you've seen today, please comment, like, subscribe. And we'll see you next time.
Pleasure.
Take care. God bless.
Take care. Bye-bye.